New York Giants fans, this week has been an interesting week so far. We are at hump day, and Daniel Jones is not walking through that door. He's not playing quarterback again for the New York Giants this year. At least I don't see it happening. There's been mixed emotions about this, but none more interesting than people realizing the the false steps of the front office, but then also not really understanding the side of the players. And all I can tell you is if you've never been in the locker room, it's hard to judge how people feel that are in that locker room. I'm Coach Gene Clemons, and I have a giant issue. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of A Giant Issue, New York Giants on SI. That is where you can get all of your New York Giants news and information. I appreciate everybody that goes over there to get what they need because obviously, right, that's who I rock with. Also, I appreciate everybody that has come along for the ride, that have become a subscriber to the New York Giants on SI YouTube page. But we still got work to do. As I talk right now, we are at 1,852 subscribers. You know how badly I want to get this thing to 2,000. Tell a friend, tell a person that you know is sitting around, not actually subscribed, but know everything that's going on in every episode. Tell them to go ahead and subscribe. I really do appreciate everything that you guys do out there in that world. That being said, I want to start here. There's been a lot of discussion about, and mainly coming from New York Giants media, but also from New York Giants fans who can't understand why people are upset inside the locker room, the players, why they might be upset that Daniel Jones is no longer the quarterback. And the only thing I can think of is I'm thinking back to the McLeod situation where McLeod got cut, and when he was cut, a lot of the players came out kind of like sad, right? Upset. And a whole bunch of people were like, man, I don't understand. Why are they all upset over somebody who was a backup, who was a liability on special teams? The only thing I can tell you is that if you've never been in a locker room, especially a football locker room, which I think is a little more unique than almost any other athletics locker room. If you've never been in a locker room, if you've never been on a team, if you've never had the camaraderie that comes with being on a team sport, then maybe you sit this one out. Maybe you sit these out. You don't have to make the comments on it. Because the people who've been in a locker room, I understand. I'm going to speak for me. I don't even want to speak for anyone else. I understand because I was in a locker room. I understand that that person that you might think is bad, I think that person is great because I've seen the work that they do. And I know that a lot of the stuff that's happening in the game may not be their fault, right? So it's going to hit me differently to see that person no longer out there than it hits you. It's especially going to hit me differently if the moves you are making are not moves that you're making that make us a better team right now, but will possibly make us a better team in the future, a future that I'm not guaranteed to be a part of because of the nature of the game. All I have is right now. All I have is right now. And so I have to take advantage of that. I say that to say, do you think any one of those players in that locker room are going, hey, we need to lose on purpose so we get a better draft pick so that we can pick the people for next year? When next year, at least 30% of the roster is going to be turned over. Why would those players give a darn about next year when this year is what matters most to them? You know, there are a bunch of players in that locker room who need to have a great end to this year, a great 7-game run in order to secure whatever bag they can secure for next year. You want those guys to be hype when you bench the starting quarterback, you skip over the number 2 guy and you go directly to the 3rd string guy? A lot of people want to bring up what Tommy DeVito did when he came in last year. When he took over last year and he came in, people want to bring up all the positives, but they don't want to talk about any of the negatives. Right? That's not fair. They don't want to talk about any of the negatives. Well, guess who gets to see all the negatives in real time? The people in that locker room. And there's a reason why Dexter Lawrence came out and said that Jones is the best quarterback on this team, because he's probably not lying. Jones is probably the best quarterback on this team. I said it before. Jones probably gives this team the best opportunity to win, but they're not trying to win. Go tell that to the players. Hey, players, we're not trying to win. Because as a player, if you tell me, hey, we're not trying to win, my response is, so why am I playing? And if your answer is, well, because we pay you, then my response is going to be, but I thought you said you weren't trying to win and you pay me to help you win. So why am I playing? Oh, and then becomes the stuff that you can't actually say out loud, because we can't make it look like we're trying to tank. We can't blatantly lose games by sitting all of our healthy starters. We can't blatantly throw games, so we have to make it appear as if we're going hard, as if we're doing whatever we can to win, while secretly hoping that we don't win another game. Like, that's what's going on right now. And you don't expect the people inside the locker room to look at this and go, this is goofy? You don't expect them inside that locker room looking at where they are in this season and go, why are we giving up now? Oh, I know. Last year they got a bunch of meaningless wins at the end of the season. And a lot of you fans sat back and said, oh, well, that was a waste because it took them out of the opportunity to get Jaden Daniels. Well, that's funny, because everybody was talking about Drake May last year. And now Drake May just looks like another dude. He doesn't look bad, but he doesn't look great. Jaden Daniels looks like the real deal. Heck, Bo Nix over the last, 6 weeks has looked like the real deal. Bo Nix. Michael Penix hasn't had a chance because they paid an old and broken Kirk Cousins $200 million in Atlanta, or else he would be out here looking like the real deal. McCarty was looking like the real deal, except he got hurt. And so now with him injured, Sam Darnold looked good, and then Sam Darnold started regressing back to who Sam Darnold's always been. My point is that none of these players care about who you're taking in the draft. The only time they care about who you're taking in the draft is when it does not affect their ability to make money, or when it positively affects their ability to make money. when it positively affects their ability to win games, which will hopefully in turn help them make more money. Why is this so difficult to understand that sometimes these things, these relationships are about more than wins and losses? Like, what if that guy that you cut, that guy that we might not think is that great, inside the locker room, he holds things together, right? He keeps things together. Everybody talks about Deonte Banks and his performance this year. Nobody talked about the fact of how big of a mentor Xavier McKinney was to Deonte Banks. They don't even consider it. They don't even consider that when you take away Xavier McKinney, you take away the guy that Deonte Banks was looking to in order to be a better version of himself. And Xavier McKinney was holding him accountable. Why? Because Xavier McKinney comes from winning. All he did was win at Alabama. He didn't start losing until he got to the Giants. He was a winner. And he kept that winning mentality with him. And he tried to pass that winning mentality on to Deonte Banks, who did not come from winning. And then you pluck the guy away. You pluck away the big homie. Inside, we talk about, oh, we got to improve the interior defensive line. We got to improve the interior defensive line. Yet there was the opportunity to improve the interior defensive line. But instead of going out and getting a marquee defensive tackle that could have came in and paired with Dexter Lawrence inside, they went and got another edge rusher. Another edge rusher. Instead of keeping the guy that was the guy who was like a mentor to Dexter Lawrence, who was someone that Dexter Lawrence could look up to, who was somebody who gave his all and had versatility and all of those things that Dexter Lawrence now has. Instead of keeping that guy, you said, oh, we can get a mid-round draft pick for him and clear a little money off the books, except where'd that money go? So you send a Leonard Williams to the Seahawks, and now you're worse against the run. You don't have a fourth pass rusher when you go 4 downs, unless you start bringing in other people. Things are incomplete. Things are incomplete. What do you think happens when you say goodbye to a Darius Slayton? You think they just keep it moving? No, a Darius Slayton has put in the sweat equity for the Giants. That locker room will feel that effect. So I'm not surprised that a guy like Dexter Lawrence says, hey, the morale isn't shot. We're good in here. We just need to play better. I'm not shocked by that. I don't look at that and go, oh my gosh, like, no, I believe him. A lot of times the turmoil, the fractured. I heard someone say that the locker room was fractured. And my response to that is, what's wrong? What's wrong inside the locker room? If anything is fractured, it's the relationship between the coaches and the players, not the players and the players. When you refer to the locker room, you're referring to the players. Now, if you want to say that there is some division within this team, there is some communication issues between the coaches, the front office, and the players, I can get on that. There are giant differences in the way in which these players think about football and the way in which these coaches and front office people think about football. This is where, in my opinion, playing the game comes into play. not being good at it, right? Because I don't think you necessarily have to be good at the game. I don't think you necessarily have to be somebody who was great at playing, but I feel like if you played the game, then you understand how the people in the locker room feel, right? I truly believe that. So like when I think about Brian Dable, who played a little football, I think they say he went off to start helping with the team because he has some ankle injuries as a defensive back, and just kind of like, decided he was going to get into coaching early. Maybe he didn't ingratiate himself into that brotherhood that you get from the locker room, so that you understand what happens when you pluck a guy out and put another guy in, right? Maybe he doesn't understand that. And if he does, maybe he just didn't do a very good job of articulating that to Joe Shane, right? Maybe he didn't do a good enough job of articulating to Joe Shane, hey, this is what happens, right? This is what happens when you break up a locker room, when you try to shake things up in the locker room. The players will tell you when it's over. The players will know, hey man, you got to get this dude up out of here. They didn't do that. They didn't do that with Deonte Banks. The locker room didn't say, hey, you got to get Deonte Banks up out of here. And by saying it, I mean their actions didn't show that they were no longer on the train, right? That their action towards Banks didn't say that they didn't have confidence in the fact that he could get the job done. In fact, the very opposite happened. I believe it was Dexter Lawrence that came out and said, no, we have a conversation. Because you don't have conversations with people you don't have any confidence in. And clearly, this team was not ready to turn the page on Daniel Jones. Now, I'm not saying that the front office did anything wrong in turning the page on Daniel Jones. You guys should know by now that my issue with what they did happened when they gave him a contract extension in the first place. They set themselves up for this when they gave him a contract extension in the first place. Now, all of the stipulations that they put into that contract extension are things that I go, oh my gosh, it's even worse than I thought. Right? So all of the different stipulations that come into play means that if you don't want to get left holding the bucket, you got to put them on the sideline. But again, I go back to what I said last pod. How bad it, because I read your comments, I responded. A lot of people like, well, there are contract stipulations, in Drew Lock's contract that are the reason why he's not out there. My response is, you gave him $5 million. Why would you give him the opportunity to make more money? Why would you give him the opportunity to make more money? You knew there was a distinct possibility at some point, based off the contract, right? Based off the contract that you gave to Daniel Jones, you knew that at some point you might have to turn to Drew Lock. And yet, with that being known, you still decided to not only get his dude $5 million, but put stipulations in his contract that he could make more? That's stupid. That makes no sense. When you're fighting to keep the cap low, your cap low, when you're fighting for every dollar, where are you getting the money to give these people? And if you thought to yourself, oh, well, this would never happen, then you clearly have not looked at Daniel Jones' career. You clearly have not paid attention to Daniel Jones in the past. He has only had 1 year where he has not been injured, where he's had to miss games. There's only been 1 year. So if you're banking on the health of Daniel Jones, mistake one. If you're banking on the performance of Daniel Jones, mistake two. If you're banking on the backup being better than Daniel Jones, and thus when you have to bench him because you gave him a clause in the contract that was so horrible that you can't afford to put him out there anymore, hey, strike three. Because if you thought that Drew Lock was going to come in and perform better than Daniel Jones, then why isn't Drew Lock your starter? So you jump over Drew Lock, you wasted $5 million. Now you're going to Tommy DeVito. Hey, can you all stop with the Tommy DeVito? Like, is they're going to him because he's looked better in practice? Like, I get it. Y'all, some people want to feel like they're insiders. But I know insiders. Nobody has said Tommy DeVito looks better in practice. And I'm talking about during the year. Why? Because most people aren't allowed into practice. With that being said, if Tommy DeVito looked better in practice than Drew Lock, then why has Drew Lock been the number 2 every single week? That's an easy flip. If Drew Lock hasn't looked good and Tommy DeVito has looked good, Tommy DeVito should be the 2. Drew Lock should be the 3 in the emergency quarterback. That has not happened one time this year. So where was the indicator that Tommy DeVito was the person that was coming and the person that could provide the spark that Brian Daboll tried to lead us to believe was the reason that they benched Daniel Jones and put in Tommy DeVito? If he was the spark, then why wasn't he inching closer to being the spark all along? What am I missing about the financial ramifications of making somebody a backup? Did they have to pay Drew Lock more money if he was a third-string emergency quarterback? Was Drew Lock set to make more money by not playing at all than if he played a little bit? So why was he still the number 2 dude if Tommy DeVito had been outplaying him all this time? Because I don't know what y'all watched, but I watched the preseason, and they all look bad in the preseason. Every single quarterback, none of them look the greatest in the preseason. So I don't know what you guys are watching that say, oh, well, Tommy DeVito has been beating him out. I don't know what y'all were watching during OTAs or during training camp. Mostly training camp. I did not see a Tommy DeVito running away with the QB2 competition. Because if I saw a Tommy DeVito that was running away with the QB2 competition, you guys know I would have been on here talking about it. Go back and look at what I was saying. None of it was about Tommy DeVito. If you remember, Tommy DeVito was one of them people who was on a bubble to make the team, and he was talking like he wanted to be out of here because he wasn't trying to be on the practice squad anymore. And I said at that time, hey, Tommy DeVito, pump your brakes. You haven't been that great. So if you end up on the practice squad again, consider it a blessing. Sit your butt there, learn some more, and be ready to go when your number's called. not know, man, Tommy DeVito's really been killing it, and I think that he should be QB number 2. Don't know why they signed this Drew Lock guy. I was the person saying, I do not know why they signed this Drew Lock guy. They should have gave Tyrod Taylor a little bit more money and had him back so you could have the same quarterback room as you had last year, because that is what Brian Dable originally wanted. Until Joe Shane said, no, I don't care what people say. I don't care what people want in this organization. It's all about what I say. It's all about what I want. It wasn't a rebuild in the preseason, ladies and gentlemen. It was we're going to put all of these weapons and all of this protection around Daniel Jones, and we're going to let our $40 million a year quarterback throw the ball all over the place. And that's what they did. They let him throw the ball all over the place, and they figured out they couldn't let him throw the ball all over the place, so they started running the ball more. And then they tried to pivot you in these press conferences on these bye weeks into believing that this was the plan all along. Yet, none of that makes any sense. I also want to shoot Mara some bail, because I'm so tired of people saying that he's the reason that they re-signed Daniel Jones. Here's what I do know. If he was the one that was pulling the strings on them to re-sign Daniel Jones, then why was he not the one to make them pick up his 5th-year option? If he was the person that wanted Daniel Jones here, then why did he let them decline the 5th-year option, which would have taken them into free agency with Daniel Jones the next year? Ta-da! It's that simple. Because that 5th-year option would have cost less than all of the money they have sunk into Daniel Jones now. But I believe that the original plan was to get rid of Daniel Jones after year 1. And then Daniel Jones had a mediocre year. And by mediocre, I mean average, because that's what mediocre means. He had an average year. And after that average year, what? After that average year, that was it. It should have been it. You had Tyrod Taylor signed to another year. You could have extended it another year. You had the succession plan in place. Instead, you took all of your money that you were trying to get from up under in a bid to get right with the cap, because Gettleman was so terrible that you went in and did the same type of terrible stuff that Gettleman does. You re-upped the D tackle and the offensive lineman well before you needed to. Gave them extensions really early. You didn't let them play the string out. Right? You did all of the stuff to not be right with the cap. Oh, well, them signing them earlier means they get them at a discount and it'll be better for the cap. Okay, cool. But when is that? Because they still ain't got no money. And then you go and you drop $5 million on a backup quarterback that you're not even going to play. And on top of that, the reason that you're not going to play the $5 million backup quarterback that you got is because you put incentives into his contract so that if he did well, he would get even more money. So you paid him all that money. You gave him an avenue to get more money, and you didn't think about the fact that your starting quarterback gets hurt every year, and or he has a clause in his contract that if he does get hurt, he gets his money guaranteed. What are we talking about? Somebody in the comments will say I'm just ranting, that I'm just talking. Somebody will call me silly. Somebody will call me foolish. Of course, the players are mad inside. They're going to rally around Tommy DeVito. You guys know this, right? It's not going to be a situation where Tommy DeVito is just better. It's going to be a situation where they rally around Tommy DeVito. You know why? Because they have no other choice. This is the hand they were dealt, and now they have to play well for them, not for the team, not even for you as fans. They have to play well to try to secure their job next year. They don't know if this coaching staff and this front office is going to be here next year. They got to get themselves ready for whoever might be here next year. They got to make sure that they've secured their spot for next year, or that they've done enough to impress people who might want to give them a job on other teams. So yeah, they're going to rally behind. They're going to rally behind them. And you know what he's probably going to do? He's probably going to throw the ball deep more than Daniel Jones did. You know what that also means? He's going to put the ball in more jeopardy than Daniel Jones puts the ball in. Because that's what happens when you throw the ball deep all the time. When you throw the ball deep all the time, you put the ball in jeopardy. When you throw the ball deep, you know what else you have to do? You got to hold the ball. You got to hold the ball. You're not waiting for people to get open, but you've got to wait for them to complete the route, or at least to get into the final phase of the route so that you can throw them open. Good luck with that. We're going to find out how good the pass protection is. Right? Tyrone Tracy, you're up. Let's see you run that thing. Why would you people think that the players would not be upset? Like, you took the dude who they've been in the trenches with, who they've watched get hit, they've watched try. You took him out, and then y'all, you pissed all over him on the way out the door. My issue ain't with Daniel Jones. My issue's with the front office. My issue's with the head coach, not with the quarterback. He didn't put himself out there. They put him out there. And now they've taken him off. But they did it in such a way that makes people question, what were you thinking? What are you doing? It doesn't endear confidence. It doesn't endear confidence from the outside, and it sure as heck doesn't endure the confidence from the inside. That's how it goes. Ladies and gentlemen, that's another issue of a Giant issue. I am Coach Gene Clemons, New York Giants on SI. Make sure that you go there for all of your New York Giants news and information. It's hot and heavy. There's a lot of stuff coming, lots of stuff coming. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button so that you get, and the notification bell so that you get all of the times that I drop a new Giant issue, Paul Latino drops a new Big Blue breakdown, or any other content that gets pushed right here on the New York Giants on the SI YouTube page. Until next time, I'm Coach Gene Clemons, and I have a Giant issue.